Hello, everyone, and welcome to Capes, Cowls Masks, the show where we uncover the world of soups and science fiction. I'm your host, Jake Hart. I'm a podcaster and a writer for the Fresh Take Hub, and as always, I'm joined by my fellow co-host.
Hi there, everyone. It's Tom Gapper, your resident comic book shogun, who is ill once again. Is it the fault of the movie we're about to review? Maybe, but let's just dive deep into it and find out.
You've been infected once again by the symbiote, Tom.
Yep, keeps happening.
You have all sorts of oozing out of you.
Yeah, but unfortunately, no cool powers and no craving for chocolate. In fact, I don't even want any chocolate right now. So, I got the shit end of this deal.
Yeah, that's not a good deal right there. So, if you haven't guessed already, welcome to our spoiler review of Venom: Let There Be Carnage, the sequel to the first Venom film that came out in 2018. So, we're going to be discussing the story, some of the themes, if there are any, performances, and any other filmmaking aspects of this film. And of course, we're going to be talking about that post-credit scene that has everyone losing their minds, but we'll get into that into a second. So this film is directed by Andy Serkis, and the screenplay was done by Kelly Marcel, returning from the first Venom film, although it did get a story treatment also by the lead character, Eddie Brock himself, Tom Hardy. So before we get into the actual film itself, Tom, I want to know from you, what is your history and relationship with the characters of Venom and Carnage?
I've always kind of really liked the characters and the concept of the symbiotes. I'll be honest, apart from I just basically never really read too deep into the characters, though. Like when they showed up in various crossover events or other people's series, I always took notice and enjoyed them being there. But I never dived into the 90s Venom stuff or the early 2000s Venom stuff. It's only really since Donny Cates and the preceding writer, whose name I'm blanking on right now, but it was their runs on the character that really brought me into it, and I have started getting into it a lot more now, and I'd actually say it's one of my favorite parts of the Marvel mythos currently. I do think just Donny Cates has done an amazing amount of work for the character, with maybe some aspects that could hopefully maybe be brought into the films, maybe Null is coming one day. That would be nice. But just the Carnage though, again, I just love the concept of the character. I mean, I know he's an absolute crazed psychopath, but I think that's kind of what I like about him, because every time he shows up, it's always an oh shit moment. Oh shit, he is Carnage. Doesn't matter what group of characters you've got, whether it's the Avengers, the X-Men, or hell, the Eternals. If Carnage shows up, you're going to be worried for the heroes there and thinking, this might not go their way. So, yeah, I'd say quite a positive relationship with the characters, even if it has only been recently that I've really dived into the lore and the canon for those characters. But hopefully I'll be picking that up a bit more. And I will say that maybe I prefer the characters in the comics than what I've seen on the big screen.
I would probably agree with you there, although my relationship with the symbiote family is, I wouldn't say it's a negative one, it's more of a non-existent one, really. I've never really been huge into Venom in general and the whole idea of the symbiote. The only part that really interests me is its origin related to Spider-Man. And my sort of main exposure of Venom comes from the 90s Spider-Man animated series that I grew up watching a lot of. And I was always sure he's cool, but there's not a lot there for me to grab onto. I was more into Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus and Mysterio, some of the sort of weirder villains, you could say. But I've always, respected that it's always had a big fandom out there for this character. I've just never understood it, personally. It's just something that I've never grasped onto and gone, oh yeah, this character's amazing. But I know it has a long history and a huge fan base out there. So I understand why they were making these films, even though the idea without Spider-Man always was that's kind of a bit weird, but we'll get into that a bit later. So yeah, my relationship is not really non-existent. I haven't read much of them in the comics at all, but I have heard extremely good things with what you've just mentioned about the recent run by Donny Cates, because he also did that big event called Maximum Carnage, did he not?
Yes, which I actually read fairly recently. I think it was like a couple of months ago, and it was something. I mean, like I definitely recommend it. I definitely enjoyed it, but just like there was a lot happening in that. But yeah, it really gave you like that was like a proper scary Carnage in there. Like, I mean, he was pretty much God mode Carnage, which is just terrifying in of itself. And yeah, Eddie had to pull out all the stops on that one to fucking win. So I definitely recommend reading it.
Yeah, I mean, with Donny Cates on board, I do really love Donny Cates as a writer on comics. I probably will check that out. I just haven't checked out any of the earlier stuff, like by Todd McFarlane. Obviously, he created the character, all that 90s stuff, where he was birthed from, that Lethal Protector run, which everyone loves as well, which, okay, I do appreciate they used that sort of term in this film we're about to talk about. But yeah, so from the beginning, my relationship with the Venom was just non-existent, really. So when they decided to make the first Venom film, and obviously with the current rights of Marvel and Sony and what they're doing with Spider-Man, they said, "Oh, this is going to be Venom, but without Spider-Man. We're going to create our own." I was a bit like, this doesn't really make sense, because I thought Venom was so intrinsically connected to Spider-Man. I did not see how they could do it personally. And then we got the film that we got, which I did not like at all. So, and now they decided to make a sequel. I don't blame them, because for some strange reason, the first Venom film earned over $850 million worldwide, which is obscene amounts of money for that film. But it seems to have its fans, and as we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, when this film opened up in the US, domestic opening weekend of 90 fucking million, which is insane. So let's talk about this film then. Now, clearly, as I've said with the box office, there are people who love this film. There are people who these films are made for, and I want to say this off the top. If you love this film and you're having a blast with this film, good for you, okay? Because I don't want to take that enjoyment away from anyone. This film is clearly designed for a certain taste of movies. Unfortunately, those people are not me. I am not one of those people. I did not resonate with this film at all. I will give it that it is slightly better than the first one in terms of pacing and what they were doing with certain characters. However, the dialogue was pretty awful throughout. I didn't buy any of the relationships or the storylines we were going in. All the characters just seemed rushed, and all the plot threads were just really lazily written in. And I felt the pacing was it was fast, but it was too fast. Like, at 38 minutes, this is a short film for most comic book films. And even though I didn't want this film to be longer, I felt as if an extra 10, 15 minutes to this film would have helped it so dramatically, because you just didn't care about any of the characters or any of the villains, their motivations. And also, this has got quite a star-studded cast. Tom Hardy, Woody Harrelson, Michelle Williams. And I just feel as if every one of them was absolutely wasted in this film. Their talents were just absolutely wasted. So yeah, overall, I did not like this film at all. It's just not my jam. It's just not my taste. We'll get into the more nitty-gritty stuff as we go on. But Tom, coming out of the theater, what did you think of Venom, Let There Be Carnage?
So yeah, what I'll say is, like, I'm the same as you. If people went into this film and absolutely loved it and had like a whale of a time watching it and want to like watch it more, then that's fantastic. I'm very happy that, you got something good out of this film. For me, I enjoyed it, but I was sat through the entire time whilst enjoying it and having a laugh, going, this isn't a good movie. As you said, it's an improvement on the first, but I don't feel like it was too much of an improvement. And I think kind of the fault there is the fact that because the film made 850 million, there wasn't really much motivation for them to change up the formula that much. I did appreciate that the final fight scene between Venom and Carnage was basically done in an area that constantly had a light shining on it. So it was just like, hey, you can actually see what's happening in this fight scene now. I don't want to hear any complaints about not being able to tell what's happening. We've got a fucking light shining on them now. And yeah, same as you, I just thought like so many of the actors in here were wasted or just not like Tom Hardy is, you know, an incredible actor. He wasn't really that great in this. I mean, he seemed like he was having a good time, having fun with it, which is, you know, great, obviously, but it wasn't exactly a tour de force. Oddly enough, I think actually the actor who like put in the best performance in the film and the most believable performance was Stephen Graham as the like genuinely. I'm not saying like he was, you know, Oscar worthy, but I genuinely thought he put in like a really decent performance and a very believable performance for the character he was playing. I'm not saying the script did him many favors, but I feel like what he was given, he did quite well with. Even that one awful line about secrets and them wanting out, and that's why you can't keep them. Such a bad line, but yeah, I think overall, whilst enjoyable, there was also a lot of disappointment there. Like I didn't really like how they handled Carnage. I thought they could have done so much better. The fact that, okay, I know it's like based on a comic book property, so this isn't a sure thing, but having him sort of killed off at the end, I was kind of there just like, oh, right. So you've just introduced Carnage and now you've just killed him off. Okay, sure, why not? Whilst the post-credit scene, which we'll get into more later, has got me excited and did elicit a very excited response from me in the cinema, the fact that like all I can say to people is to go and watch this film for the post-credit scene, this doesn't paint this as a great movie. So enjoyable, but not a film I'm going to be rushing to watch again.
I would say this is probably something I will not watch again, as I haven't rewatched the first Venom since I first saw it in the cinemas. I was considering it, watching before seeing this one, but I thought, no, I don't want to put myself through that again. I watched it once, and that's enough for me. I mean, let's get into the story then. So I feel as if, though, with the first one, and going into the second one, it seems as if they were really looking at what the fans and the audience really liked about the first one. And even though it didn't work for me, people were really focusing on the buddy cop aspect of the Venom film, in terms of, obviously, Venom and Eddie Brock. And the sort of outrageous, ludicrous craziness of it all. So I think they were like, let's take all those elements which people seem to be really vibing with, and let's just put them on steroids. Do you know what I mean? Let's just make this, if I dare say, maximum carnage. You know what I mean? Let's go all out and have a blast with this film. And like, while I think it sort of works for what they made the film they wanted to make, I think. Like, there's no...
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no, like, oh, we're trying to be deep or philosophical. Like, no, we just want to have a fun action film of two slimy things fighting each other. And in that aspect, I think they succeeded. For me, I think it's a matter of tone and taste, which just doesn't resonate with me. So I understand why they took this from the first one and wanted to explode it even more in the second. But those are the elements of the first one which I really didn't like. So going into this one, the tone was just all over the place for me. The comedy fell pretty much flat, for me anyway. And I know that a lot of people do enjoy this, because the screening I was in, there were a lot of laughs. There were a lot of the people in the audience enjoying the film. And again, I don't want to take that away from everyone. I almost felt like a grumpy guy next to people being like, "Oh, I don't really like this." Like, granted, it got a couple of chuckles out of me sometimes, but overall, yeah, the humor is just not for me. It's just not for me. And I felt with the story, it just feels, okay, this serial killer is wanting to get his story out, and then he gets out, and then it's all about just killing Eddie Brock for some reason. It just felt really like, okay, I've discovered where you've hidden all your victims or something like that, But he was already on death row. It was just sped up. And it was just so like, I'm going to kill you for this. So a lot of the motivations of Cletus Kasady and Shriek, oh my God, I just felt as if that was the biggest wasted opportunity with Shriek, with how they used her as this weird love triangle thing. But by the end of the film, it doesn't make sense because she's suddenly like, no, I'm not with you anymore. I'm against all this. Like, well, where did this come from? So yeah, the story is just inconsistent throughout. And like, I think the plot that there is a good movie in here somewhere. I think like if you said on paper, look, this movie is about exploring the bromance between Eddie and Venom and that they need each other. And that by the end of the film, it's about unification and, you know, I think on paper it sounds good, but the execution of it is just a mess, an absolute mess, and very mixed signals and themes. But what did you think of the story and the plot going forward?
Yeah, I'm very much in agreement with you that it just seemed very inconsistent. I mean, Shriek, I was initially excited for because I thought that would. Right, so I kind of thought it would go the way if maybe like Shriek would end up teaming up with Venom at the end to help take down Carnage because, you know, of her power set. And I thought that could actually be an interesting thing if maybe like Cletus, whilst under Carnage, got just like so crazed, so psychopathic that even she was like, okay, he needs to be stopped. This is too much. But they didn't really explore that because it was kind of a case of like, they did that a little bit where Carnage is kind of just like growing around the cathedral and she's just like, this may be getting a bit much now. But then she still tries, like, the only reason like her powers get used against Carnage is because Venom hits her against the bell and she starts falling and then just decides in that moment to scream. It was just like, surely there was a better way of doing that, Venom. Like maybe waiting until she shrieks and then diving out of the way, but whatever. Yeah, the comedy, whilst it did elicit like some like laughs out of me, and there were some moments I was just like, okay, fair play, that was pretty funny. Overall, yeah, it's not really my sort of comedy. It just seemed a bit. Some of it just seemed a bit too obvious, and just sometimes it was just like going on a bit much. And also, like, whilst I did like the bromance aspect between Eddie and Venom, and I like how they did the classic thing of like having a disagreement, going apart, and then coming back together and realizing they need each other. Yeah, it's a great story on paper, but I thought the execution was poor. And also, I mean, this one is kind of on me and less on the film, but like certain people coming out of the screenings, like before I saw it, were saying how they were playing up the almost like homoerotic relationship between Brock and Venom. And I was just like, okay, cool, because I always got that vibe in the comics. Like, I'm excited to see that. And then I see the film and I was like, I didn't really actually get that. I feel like people were just like really just wishing it. But I wasn't getting that vibe. And I feel like that would have been a more fun vibe to explore. Just because, as I said, that's just what I've always taken from the character. But as I said, that's more on me, not so much on the film. So yeah, I think it did feel rushed. Like, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I was coming out of the film thinking like, yeah, 90 minutes probably wasn't enough time for the story they're telling. Not that I exactly wanted more time with that dialogue, but equally if the film had more room to breathe in, might have got something a bit better out of it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. As I say, if you're going to Carnage for like just some big, action story with two huge monsters fighting each other, then yeah, the film did its job and it's enjoyable in that sense. But if you were hoping for any sort of nuance, just this ain't the film for that. And it was just very heavy-handed throughout. Like, right, let's talk about the rave scene.
No, wait, I want to say this though. Like, even if you're making like a quote-unquote dumb popcorn movie, right? You still have to have some sort of story or character arc for your characters, even if it's not great. And I feel as if there wasn't that there, because the whole premise of this fracture between Eddie Brock and Venom is that he doesn't want Venom to just mindlessly eat people, and Venom's just like, oh, I'm sick and tired of just being cooped up here. We should be out there getting bad guys or anything like that sort of thing. So there's that struggle. But then by the end of the film, You know, when before he's about to fight Carnage, he's like, I will let you eat everybody. So he hasn't learned anything. There's no character arc. So by the end of the film, we're just at the same position we were at the start of the film, really. Sure, they're unified and their bromance is stronger, but neither of them have gone through a character arc to learn anything about themselves or to change in a way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you there. And it's just like, you can't just like put a Don Quixote quote at the end of the film and think that sums up the entire character arc for the characters. It's just like, well, no, because you're just comparing Venom to Don Quixote, which don't do that. Don't do that. But yeah, the rave scene especially, hated that. So much hated that. But just it was okay. So it was a nice sentiment when you've got Venom going up on that stage and he's going on about like how everyone should be free to be who they are and just to like live on this planet as equals. It was a nice sentiment, sure. But again, the execution was just clumsy. It felt very heavy-handed, and it felt like very, very forced.
Well, it wasn't earned. Do you know what I mean? In the entire film, they're sort of subtly hinting at what this relationship fracture is about, and then he goes up and makes this speech, and you're like, well, this is not landing because we don't care about this relationship enough.
Yeah. It was just some weird... I love Andy Serkis, but there was just some weird direction choices in this film and a lot of weird dialogue choices. So yeah, I mean, I guess like I said, it was enjoyable in a sense, but just in so many other ways, it just was a slog to get through. It just didn't make a lot of sense at times, and then other times it made too much sense, and I was just like, ugh. That was the thing. It wasn't a subtle film.
No, there's nothing subtle about this film at all. I'll tell you, the least subtle of this film as well was Woody Harrelson as Cletus Kasady / Carnage. Now, again, I have a problem with just how he was handled. Now, first of all, if you're going to create some form of sympathy for the villain, do it at the beginning of the film, not like nearly at the end of the film where you, by this point, you don't care. They've already done such horrendous things in the film that why should you care now about this backstory about his abusive father and all this sort of stuff? Do that at the beginning of the film to latch in the audience of like, okay, he's had a traumatic experience. While you don't agree with what he's doing, you can maybe understand where he came from, in a sense. But he doesn't have any of that. He's just this one-note villain throughout. And I'm sorry, I really like Woody Harrelson as an actor, but I just thought this was an extremely weird and poor performance from him. I did not feel any villainy from him, and we'll get into the action in a bit later, but I just didn't feel the Carnage.
No, I'm completely with you there. I mean, the first scene where you have like Carnage is born and he just like rips through the prison, admittedly, I enjoyed that scene, and I was thinking to myself, okay, this is a good start, a good sign of like things to come. But then when that turned out to really be the best Carnage scene, and it just like, well, no, that was supposed to be a good opener, a good like introduction to the character, and then he's meant to get more menacing and just more awesome as the film goes on. But just like, no, just Woody Harrelson's performance. I love the guy. Like, usually for me, he can do absolutely no wrong, but I don't know. Again, I feel like he was trying, but just the character I don't think was for him. I was always a bit hesitant about Woody Harrelson as Cletus Kasady.
Well, especially after that post-credits with the wig.
Yeah, with the wig. But yeah, seeing this film, it kind of vindicated me and thinking like, yeah, like I love Woody Harrelson, but this just wasn't the right character for him. So yeah, just quite disappointed. But like, I guess luckily because of the multiverse and everything, we can maybe get another Carnage one day with a different actor. We can just forget about wash the taste of this one out of our mouths.
I say either. You guys say either. I say neither. And I say neither. Neither, neither. Let's call the whole thing off. Ta-da! Catch up.
Excuse me?
Yummy.
Let's talk about some of the cast. Like, obviously, Tom Hardy playing Eddie Brock as Venom. Following up what you said, while I'm not enjoying his performance because I just don't like the choices the director and the scriptwriter and Tom Hardy himself had decided to go for, I have to commend and respect Tom Hardy because he is giving it 110%. He is going all out in this performance, and by the looks of it, he is having the time of his life. And I will say that will be my biggest praise of the film, like in the first film as well, is that I really admire and respect Tom Hardy's dedication to this character. The amount of research he's going through, the amount of commitment in his performance to this character. I just don't like the direction of it, but my God, is he having a blast in this film?
Yeah, I mean, you can tell he's having an absolute blast. You can tell he's like loving it, and I do love that he clearly like loves the character. And I don't know, maybe I just need to like read more Venom comics that aren't Donny Cates. But for me, his Eddie Brock isn't Eddie Brock like the way I envision the character. I think my biggest issue with the Venom films and this one is that they lean into the comedy too much. And whilst like Tom Hardy does, do comedy well, and maybe that's why I was like finding some of the jokes funny, is just because of the way he delivers it. And the fact he's also doing like Venom's voice as well. So there is that aspect as well. I don't know. It's just like, it's not the Eddie Brock I personally would have like chosen to do had I been the one like writing the film. Let's just put it that way. I will give him props for, just like giving it his all, having a laugh with it. And I would be excited to see him up alongside maybe any Spider-Man, really. But we'll dive into that later. I find it hard to really just like praise Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock just because like I said, it doesn't resonate with me. It's not really the Eddie Brock I would have wanted. So as much as I love Tom Hardy, I just can't really say much good things about Eddie at this point.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And, we spoke about Woody Harrelson as well. One thing I will say about Woody Harrelson as well and his performance in it is that when I was actually excited for the prospect of having Carnage in the second one, because I do like the idea of Carnage, of this, maybe again suited to my dark taste, this sadistic serial killer. And in my head, I had a very specific vision of what I wanted like a live action Carnage to be, or a Cletus Kasady. And again, I just felt they played too much into the humor of it, and he wasn't a villain or even just a person that you just truly fear. Like, this guy is absolutely nuts, and he's like, at any moment he could snap and kill you. Do you know what I mean? I just didn't get that from Woody Harrelson. And to tie this to his performance is the choice of the rating of this film. Now, it was a similar concern I had with the first one, where I was like, you know what? I feel as if this film should have been rated R. You could even clearly see in the editing where certain scenes were cut out to make it PG-13. And I felt very much the same here. I just thought, if you're going to do Carnage, just go for it, man. Like, we've seen now the track record of successful comic book movies that are rated R, Deadpool, Joker, etc. Just go for it. And I feel as if a film that's called Let There Be Carnage really wasn't that much carnage. I wanted a bit more violence. I wanted a bit more gore. I wanted a bit more sadistic nature from Cletus Kasady. You seeing him do this. You get moments of it, but you never see the full graphic nature, so you don't know how dangerous this guy could be. That's just me anyway. I know, from a business point of view, making it PG-13, you make it available for a bigger audience, naturally bringing in more money, which seems to have worked for them. I don't know, though. I feel as if the Venom films but I feel as if they're trying to be something that I don't think they are. I feel as if they should be a bit darker and a bit more violent.
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you. Especially if they are, as you said, if they call the film "Let There Be Carnage." Just, I don't know. I don't feel like there is much of an excuse not to do R-rated superhero films anymore because, as you the examples you said, and then there's the Suicide Squad as well, which was, runaway success, critically acclaimed. I feel like it would have freed up the script a bit more, and maybe they could have actually made the film longer and put a bit more depth into it because they would have had like less restraints on them, and the action scenes could have been even cooler. It's not to say that a superhero film needs to be R-rated for it to be good, but for certain ones, it kind of does. And yeah, as you said, because Cletus Kasady is meant to be just this unrepentant psychopath who, yeah, if you're in a room with him, you're going to be scared every second because at any second he could just like snap and just strangle you or stab you or eat you or whatever. He's just an unpredictable mess. And yeah, just the rating for this just didn't allow for that. It just, as you said, they ended up making him a bit too comedic, and I just didn't feel all that scared of him. Which, that's the thing about Carnage. Whether it's Carnage or whether it's Cletus, you are scared of them no matter what. And yeah, just didn't get that vibe from this. And as I said earlier, I just don't think Woody Harrelson was the right choice for the character. But potentially, if they'd had like a R rating, maybe it could have worked. But just, I don't know. I really don't know. I guess they got to make it MCU safe.
Well, and we keep alluding to it, but we'll get into that in a second. What did you think of like the rest of the supporting cast? Like I said up top, I think it was if this is where most of the cast I feel as if was wasted. Michelle Williams, I really love her as an actress. I think she's fantastic, but in both of these films now, like it's just a disservice to her. I don't know what both Ruben Fleischer and Andy Serkis are doing behind the camera with a lot of these supporting cast. There's nothing coming from them at all. I feel as if they're just reading through the dialogue, as awful as some of it is, and none of them are really given any story arcs either. Like I said, the biggest problem I had of all the characters was Shriek and how she was handled. Okay, it was kind of cool to see Venom take over Anne, and you get like an allude to Lady Venom. But I don't know, man. And her boyfriend, that Dan guy, like, what the hell was he doing there?
Fire and sound.
Do you know what I mean? And
just without the sound.
And I was actually thinking exactly what Venom was thinking at the end of the fight. He was like, I thought he was more of a hindrance than a help. So I was like, yeah, I'm with you there, Venom. What the hell was he doing there at the end? Although I will have to say, big shout out to Peggy Lou. I did love her as Mrs. Chen. And the relationship that she has with Eddie Brock and Venom, I think is adorable. I do like that little relationship they have there. So that's another positive I'll give to the film. Peggy Lou did do a fun job as Mrs. Chen, and all the scenes she was in, I had a great time watching.
Yeah, it's nice that they gave her like a bit more to work with in this one, because I gotta be honest, just like, I love Peggy Lou, but just like the character in the first film did seem like a bit of a stereotype, really. Just no real depth to the character. Not to say that this film gave her like a lot of depth, but at least like fleshed her out a bit more. At least made it so like she's got a relationship now with like Eddie and Venom. And I did like that nice moment where like Venom flops in a drunk's body, and she like rushes over to him to like just like just console him and that. I thought that was like a nice little moment. Yeah, I've already said like I enjoyed Stephen Graham's performance. Like I said, I just thought out of everyone with the script he was given, he did the most with it. And though it was a bit jarring, because whereas every other character seemed to have like comedic moments, his never did. But like, as I said, I kind of like that contrast, but like it was kind of painfully obvious. Like, for example, in the scene where like Eddie finds out Cletus is on the run, and the cop comes over and is just like checking on him and just looking around the apartment. just you could see Tom Hardy's trying to play Eddie Brock a bit for laughs in that, whereas Stephen Graham is just playing it straight FBI agent. Just and like the difference was quite noticeable. So I don't know. Whilst I can praise his performance because of how tonally different it was to everyone else in the film, it is also kind of a bit jarring. So that's maybe, I don't know whether that's a direction problem or a writing problem or a mixture of both, but that is maybe something that needs to be looked at, because if they are setting him up to be the baddie for the next film, which I believe they are, they're going to be setting him up to be Toxin. It's going to be a bit weird if, again, you're having Venom, Eddie playing it for laughs, but then his character being like really dark and serious. It's just going to be a weird tonal thing that I think they're going to need to fine tune and balance for that third film that we're apparently getting. So, and yeah, I'm with you as well on Michelle Williams. Just as much as I love her, yeah, we didn't get much from her character. Again, I feel like she did what she could with what she had, but what her character had was very, very little. And honestly, did that whole story about her and Dan and the engagement, did it need to be in the film? Did we need that at all? I don't think we did. And yeah, Naomi Harris was also wasted. So wasted. And very disappointed because like I was initially quite excited when I heard Shriek was going to be in the film, and then when I saw her in the film and saw like how her powers worked, I was just like, okay, cool. But then just throughout the film, I just got nothing else out of the character, and like sometimes I was even just like, I'm not even sure if I want you here at this point. Like you're boring me, if anything. Like your only purpose here seems to be to occasionally annoy Carnage into hitting you.
Well,
just didn't need to be there.
This is the problem I have with also Stephen Graham's character, is that they're trying to somehow link these two characters together and with some sort of through line, but it doesn't work because in the opening scene where she breaks out of the van, we discover much later in the film that was Stephen Graham's character.
Yeah, I didn't even clock until he said that was him.
That's what I mean. So you can't do that at the very end of the film to somehow form a connection now between you and this character. Do you know what I mean? It should have been a through line throughout the film of like, oh, I need to get Francis. What was Francis? Francis Barrison. Yeah. Is that, I'm got to make sure she doesn't escape and all this up. But it's none of that until the very end of the film. So that I thought it was just poorly handled, their relationship together. And also, I love Stephen Graham. I think he's a wonderful actor. The fact that he's Liverpudlian and can pull off an American accent like that at all is fantastic. I do think, though, it's a bit too camp, his performance here. It felt like he was putting on an American accent rather than having an American accent. I don't know if was his choice or if that was the direction from Circus, but for me, it just didn't feel right, personally.
No, fair enough. I mean, for me, I mean, like, to be honest, I think for me, I might not have noticed because I was probably just sat there just listening to Tom Hardy's voice choice for Eddie Brock and just going like, why have you made such a strange choice for this accent? But that is just what Tom Hardy does. He can never just do an accent. It's got to be, he has to put weird thing, which I guess makes it a bit more authentic and that, but just it is something I've noticed with his roles. He tends to just doesn't play an accent straight. He's always going to throw some weird ticks in or stuff like that. So I think that might have distracted me maybe from Stephen Graham's American accents. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I enjoyed his performance enough, but yeah, I just think like he was his character tonally didn't fit in the movie, I don't think.
And maybe you can clear this up for me, but I was completely bamboozled by this as well. That when he gets knocked off and supposedly dead, and then we see all the eyes, like they're all blue and stuff like that. And what was the villain he's meant to become?
Toxin.
Yeah. I didn't get where all of a sudden these blue eyes and powers are going to be came from.
Oh, that confused me as well, buddy.
Do you know what I mean?
He was fighting Shriek. He wasn't fighting. So, like, where did we, like, unless at some point Carnage decided just to slip some of his blood into him, but we didn't see that. I
thought he was dead.
Well, I was a bit confused because, like, initially I thought, oh, he's going to be dead because she's wrapped a chain around him and thrown him off a building. But then, like, he landed like 10 feet below on a bar and just stayed there. So I was kind of just like, well, he's probably not dead from that, surely. So then when he opened his eyes, and I was just like, okay, so why?
Right. Okay.
Why are you blue?
I'm not going crazy then, because I was just like, I looked at my girlfriend as well. I was like, what the hell's happening here? Where did the blue eyes suddenly come from?
Yeah, no, I'm... Like I said, I'm confused about it. I know Toxin is meant to be an offspring of Venom and Carnage, but again, like, I don't know where that, like, came from. Like, okay, sure, like, because the detective, Mulligan, he is supposed to become Toxin anyway, so that's fine. But you can't just have him open his eyes up and have them blue and just go, see, he's become Toxin now. No, you need to explain how that happens. You need to explain. You can't just leave it like that. Like, where did it happen? Oh, that angered me so much. And you've opened up that can of worms now. Because it just was so poorly explained, and it was literally just thrown in there to make people go, oh, Toxin's coming. Even though, like, let's be honest, I mean, you weren't really sure who Toxin was. I guarantee you, like, the only people who really know who Toxin are people who have read enough into the comics to know the symbiotes well enough to know that there is a Toxin that exists. It would be like if they were like, oh, Scream is coming in the next one. No one knows who Scream is. Like, so it's not really a no shit moment unless you explain why it's a no shit moment. That was my view on that.
And again, judging by the post-credit scene, it doesn't look like they're going to be exploring that anytime soon. So
yeah, I just saw, like, what is... Oh, my God.
Well, according to Sony, everything will make sense after No Way Home, Tom.
Will it? Will it?
Will it, though? Will it, though?
This is about me wanting to live without you, whining in my ear all the time about eating bad guys, or like nagging me about Anne, or destroying my place, or destroying my life.
Do you know how lucky you are that I chose you?
You chose me? But I'm the only person that took you in when your friends kicked you off the planet Mingmong because you are a reject. You are a pariah. Lethal protection, my ass. You couldn't protect anything. You are useless. You can get a job down here cleaning toilets.
I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. Please, let me fix it.
How about it?
So I can bring it again.
Let's get into any other, like, filmmaking aspects. Is there anything else that caught your eye or ear in this film, Tom? That it could be the action, the cinematography, the score, whether you liked it or disliked it.
Honestly, I couldn't tell you what the score was, so that should give you some idea into how memorable that score was. It just didn't land with me at all. There were some shots, I guess, that were, like, quite cool. I did, like I said, I did like the sort of setting of the cathedral for that final fight with the sort of light shining in, and I just liked the colors in that. And initially, like, so, I think that, like, initial shot of, like, Venom and Carnage, like, coming together in their fight, like, that was quite cool. But otherwise, I wouldn't say anything really caught my eye. There was, like, for example, I'm going to use the example of Captain America and the Winter Soldier. Every time I watch that film, and it's after, like, Alexander Pierce's character, like, dies, and he says, "Hail Hydra," and it's just that shot of his, like, body on the floor with the helicarrier in the background. That is a shot that lives rent-free in my head, because, like, I don't know what it is, whether it's the composition or anything. It's just a fucking great shot. There's no moments like that in Venom where, like, I'm just like, that was a well-shot scene. It was just nothing like that at all. I thought, like, CGI-wise, you know, Venom and Carnage look great. I'll give them that. They did look really, really good. So the effects in that regards, yeah, it was almost, like, believable in a way. Like, you know, you're obviously aware that it is a CGI monster, but it was also kind of so well done that at times you can just be forgiven for just not being aware of it at that moment and just going like, oh yeah, that's Venom, that's cool. But yeah, just like there's nothing really in the film that, like, blew me away or made me think this was particularly good. I think it was just all across the board average at best, with the exception of the graphics. Like I said, the CGI was very good, but other than that, very average.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I would say, because you mentioned it earlier, that they learned their lessons from the first one, though, I would say, with a lot of the big action set pieces where you had light and you were able to see what was going on all in between the action sequences and the moves. So I did appreciate that they learned their lesson from that. But it was both fights, like the both big action sequences, which for me were Carnage's escape and then obviously the final fight, both had a lot of potential, but just failed because they, as I mentioned, they just didn't let the Carnage out enough, I felt. It's not one to be remembered, but I feel as if when Carnage breaks out of prison, that scene could have been amazing, I found. Because I felt as if it could have been a moment, in a way you could have had maybe like a moment of like Vader at the end of Rogue One, you know, where it's utter fear from like the prison wardens and stuff like that as this unstoppable force is coming towards you. Do you know what I mean? It was fun in some way, but I felt as if this should be terrifying. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think what the thing is as well is like, because I appreciate that, like, you know, movies have to do this sometimes, depending on like, you know, what action sequences they're trying to go for, what actors they've got in the role, what stuntmen they have available, all this, that, the other. But I think we have been spoiled in recent years with films and TV shows giving us such good action that whenever I see action films where just like they're continuously cutting, it bothers me now. Like I'm just there, like Daredevil has ruined me. Basically, just give me the one-shot action sequences. I think maybe a one-shot symbiote action sequence in a
and
fight.
Shang-Chi,
and Shang-Chi as well. Yeah, like I feel just like I'm expecting more now from my action scenes, and that was another problem I had, especially in the Venom Carnage fight. Was just a lot of cutting to kind of like, you know, hide the fact that, you know, they've got to work around a lot of shit. So yeah, just like that was kind of disappointing because like same as you, the Carnage scene in the prison could have been something really fucking brutal. And I reckon, like you said, as Vader in the end of Rogue One, which is everyone is like, shit, we need to get the fuck out of here, but it doesn't matter because he's just like going through, slicing through everyone, bullets flying. I did like that one bit with, you know, they're shooting the bullets and he just like opens up his stomach, so they just like,
and then he fires them back at them.
Yeah, like, so I did like that aspect of it, but
and you know, and the moment as well where he sticks the tongue down the guy's throat, like they could have gone a bit further with that. I thought, make us really get, oh my god, like, but they just cut it at a moment where I thought as if, nah, you're playing it safe there.
Yeah, because I mean, like, a good example for that is in the third Pirates of the Caribbean film, where Davy Jones gets a hold of that one guy and starts putting his tentacles all like through his nose and everything, but it like continues, so you actually see them like popping back out again, and it is like really, oh my god. But as you said, the Carnage one, they cut it out too early. I was starting to get that thing of oh god, but then they pulled away, and then I was like, okay. But again, this is where maybe like this proving the point really that the film should have been R-rated.
Well, but you say that, but the Pirates of the Caribbean wasn't R-rated.
Yeah, they still got away with that,
and they got away with
as well.
That,
so yeah, it's. I don't know. I feel like there's still more lessons they need to learn if they want to continue making these films, which they are going to be continuing making these films, whether we like them or not. But yeah, as I said, just overall, I have the same view with this film as I did with the first one in terms of like the cinematography, the action, CGI, and all that. It's just it very much feels like a superhero film before the MCU. Like, this would have worked brilliantly in the early 2000s.
90s. It's got the 90s flavor all over it.
Which, yeah, I mean, well, like, there were so many Lethal Protector references in the film, and it was kind of hard not to make the 90s link, to be honest. They really were hammering that home at the end. It's like, hey guys, Lethal Protectors reference. Do you get it? Do you get it yet? Lethal Protectors.
I mean, at this point, they've got to call the third film Lethal Protector, don't they?
I mean, they kind of have to now, yeah. They've dug themselves a hole. Because I can't think of a clever wordplay they could use with toxin.
Let there be toxin.
That would just be terrible. That would be so bad. Oh. But yeah, it's got to be something the toxin can then say in the movie. Like, Carnage does say, let there be carnage.
Again. Like, I knew, it was kind of obvious that line would come up at some point. But again, God, the way it was used, I was just like, oh, no. Why? Oh. Anyway.
So many missed opportunities.
So many missed opportunities.
Anything you want to unburden yourself with before this happens?
Yes. I have wishes to bestow upon you. I want to wish you this heartbreak.
Uh-oh. Too late.
I wish for you to see out your days alone as you always have been.
Watch it, pal.
Where are you going with this?
You are a cancer to everyone who ever loved you, Eddie. Deceived your trusting fiancé, and no wonder Daddy could never look at you again after you killed his wife, your mother, just by being born.
Let's get into the post-credit scene then, Tom. So, thank you all for waiting patiently. I know you've waited for this, just like we were waiting patiently at DC Fandom for the Batman trailer. But we're here now, the post-credit scene. Now, it was an interesting experience because obviously the film had come out 2 weeks prior in the United States, and even some of the press screenings, everyone was saying, oh my God, there's a post-credit scene that's going to blow your mind. So and we'd been discussing it now for a couple of weeks about what it could be, what's going to blow our mind. We had some theories, and our theories were kind of true. We suspected that the only thing that could possibly blow our minds would be the appearance of Tom Holland, Spider-Man. So the scene plays out as in they're on that island, they're having a bit of a domestic, and then all of a sudden the room shakes and you see like this weird shift of everything, and he's no longer on the island, he's in some motel room, and you hear on the news J. Jonah Jameson talking about Spider-Man, and it's the moment at the end of Far From Home where we see that footage where Peter Parker is outed as Spider-Man, and Venom sees this and says, that guy, and he licks the TV across Peter Parker's face. So I have to say, while I sort of expected this to happen, I've got to admit, there was a little bit of like, oh my God. Like, there were, and, as soon as I heard J. Jonah Jameson's voice, I sort of elbowed my girlfriend, like, shh, here it comes. Like, knowing sort of what was going to happen. But it was still quite a joyous experience. It was definitely the best element of the entire film, I have to say.
Yeah, definitely.
I was a bit kind of mad. I was like, you made me go through 90 minutes just to get to this scene. But Tom, here we are. It was inevitable, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It looks like Tom Holland's Spider-Man is going to be interacting with Tom Hardy's Venom. First of all, the scene. Now, I'm a bit confused as how the moment in time of when this happens, right? So there's obviously a shift in the multiverse. Has Eddie Brock come to the MCU one? Is that what it looks like? He's been transported into the MCU?
That's kind of what it looked like to me. But yeah, I'm kind of so... Yeah, if we just go like from the start of the scene, so obviously it starts off with like they have, as you said, having a bit of a domestic, and like Venom's just like, I'm connected to a hive mind that's like millions of light years away, full of knowledge from like the dawn of time that like your brain couldn't comprehend. And then like Eddie's just like, oh, try me. And he's just like, all right, okay, I'll give you just a little taste of this knowledge. And like initially I thought that we were gonna get like, he just like blasts Eddie full of knowledge, and all of a sudden Eddie becomes like aware that the multiverse exists, or just something like that. Like he'd see something that would then like link into like the later film. So when that was happening, and then just like the planet shakes, I guess, and they wind up in a new room, and Venom is just like, what the what's that? I was like, okay, what the fuck just happened? Because clearly Venom didn't do that. So what the fuck just happened? And then yeah, as soon as I saw J.K. Simmons on the TV, it was actually funny. As soon as he appeared on the TV, I saw about like 10 people around me in the cinema just point. They all just pointed. They were like, oh! And I'll admit, I was kind of sat there just like, oh shit. And as it kept going, and it was just like, oh shit, they're actually doing it. Oh my god. So, but yeah, the timing is interesting because like the assumption is the Doctor Strange's spell is what causes the, let's say, fluctuations in the multiverse that maybe end up like, I don't know if they're merging universes or just like some characters getting sucked in to the main MCU timeline or something.
There's two moments. You have to remember. You have the first moment is technically in Loki. Because that is straight after Endgame.
Yeah.
And then this is where the timing of it is, for me, it's a bit confusing. So you have that moment, which is straight after Endgame. Then you have what you were saying, what we see in the No Way Home film, in the trailer, where Doctor Strange is doing that, and maybe something happens there that expands the multiverse. But that's obviously post Far From Home. So...
Well, my thinking is that... Right, so, okay, how am I going to explain this? Give me a second whilst I try and explain this now. So, up until Loki killed He Who Remains and split off the multiverse, up until that point, in my theory, the universe that contained Venom didn't exist within the sacred timeline, because it couldn't exist within the sacred timeline. So then once Loki then like unleashes the multiverse, you know, it's not just going to be from that moment in time, like more universes are made because they were outside of time. So it's just going to be like from the dawn of time, like multiverses are going to start being anywhere that sort of decisions can change and alter things. That's when it's going to be made. So Venom technically didn't exist until after Loki. And then I think it's Doctor Strange's spell then, which is going to be what like brings him into the fold then. That's what I've been thinking, if that makes sense to you, dear listeners. Yeah, so just because like I do feel like they were quite thing about like, you know, the one sacred timeline, and like even if there were multiple universes within like that sacred timeline, they'd all be following the same timeline, so then that doesn't allow for Venom to exist. So I don't know, I expect maybe they'll explain it in a bit more detail in No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness. But yeah, I'm excited to see that because I mean, Venom's got to be in No Way Home now, surely.
That was going to be my next question. Does he pop up in No Way Home? Post-credit scene, maybe? Or in the film?
I reckon possibly in the film. And I reckon it's I don't know, it could go two ways, see. They could go down the route of Venom joining up with the Sinister Six. Or it could go the route of Venom helping out Spider-Man. Maybe they could only get Andrew Garfield and not Tobey Maguire, so they were just like, Hardy, do you want to just do Venom in this?
Well, here's another one for you. Like you said, Venom says that he's part of this hive mind of across billions of years and galaxies and all of that. Does that include through multiverses? Because is he in the same hive mind as Topher Grace as Venom?
That is actually a good point. Or maybe it could just be because he's now shifted into a new universe, he has access to that universe's Clintar hive mind. Or something like that. I don't know. I don't think there's really anything in the comics that like fully states that like, you know, the Venom hive mind can reach through multiverses, but I also feel because of how like sci-fi heavy the very concept of the symbiotes and like how they work is, you could very easily like write something to say that they could. And with the, writing for it, I feel like you could, like, suspend your disbelief enough to just go, yeah, okay, so they can reach across the multiverse to tap into this giant hive mind because they're all symbiotes and they're linked through the void. The great oblivion. I will admit, like, part of me was, like, wondering if, like I've been saying throughout the podcast, I was, like, really wondering if they were going to start bringing in some, like, just some hints towards, like, Null. Because there were certain bits, like, for example, when Tom Hardy's when Eddie Brock is reading the letter he got from Cletus, and he's like having to like read it because the guy's written it in a circle. Like that was a thing from Maximum Carnage, where just like when he was in God mode, he had like this spiral logo that like then all of his like foot soldiers like had as well. So I was thinking to myself, is that maybe a link to it? And then again, when Stephen Graham's character like opens his eyes and he's like full toxin, he's just like monsters everywhere. And I was just like, well, if he's a symbiote linked to the hive mind, does he know something now? So just, I don't know. It's probably me reading a lot into it, but I feel probably because of how popular Donny Cates' Venom run was, I think it's very likely in the future we may get some Null content, maybe. I don't know. It depends how many of these movies they want to make, and if they do want to kind of do it so the Sonyverse is part of the MCU now, because then you could make it a big crossover event. A multi-company crossover event.
Here's my theory, right? Now, I've pieced this theory together from everything I've heard from basically three different things. Amy Pascal and Sony execs, Tom Holland's comments, and now this post-credit scene, right? First of all, with the Sony execs, I think they're fully committed to this Sonyverse Spider-Man thing, right? I think they're going to go all out. They're going to make multiple Venom films. You know, they're probably going to explore, they got Morbius coming. We'll see what happens there. They got Craven coming. Obviously, we saw in Morbius Michael Keaton, who is possibly, we can't confirm, Adrian Toomes. We don't know. So I think they're all in 100%. Going to Tom Holland's comments recently, where he was speaking about No Way Home and saying that they treated this as a final film for this iteration of the character. And he said, I would love to come back and play this character again, but if I do come back to play this character again, it would be a completely different version. It would not be the Homecoming trilogy again. So, and I was like, okay, that's a very interesting way of saying you want to come back to the role. Interesting choice of words there. Now seeing this post-credit scene of the very interaction of Venom and Tom Holland's Spider-Man, I have a funny feeling that in No Way Home, by the end of the film, he is literally going to be out of the MCU. There is no way home for him. And then he is going to continue his adventures in other films under just Sony. That I could be completely wrong here. This is pure speculation. But I'm thinking from everything that everybody has said and now seeing this post-credit scene, I feel as if it's highly likely now that Sony are like, thank you, Marvel. It's been a great blast working with you, but we'll take it from here now. We've got our own universe up and running.
I mean, I definitely see some merits to your argument, and I definitely think it would make a lot of sense. But I just don't know if I see Feige and the rest of Marvel and Disney just letting something like that happen without some assurances that the character can... Because, like, I mean, they really wanted Spider-Man in the MCU, not just because, just so they can have Spider-Man in the MCU, but because, Spider-Man is Marvel. He is, like, the most popular hero Marvel have ever created. It's not even a competition. Like, there might be some people listening to this going, oh, but so-and-so's a better character. Spider-Man's always been Marvel's most marketable. He's at like Superman levels.
Yeah, he's Batman and Superman level.
Yeah. And then the next Marvel heroes are like much lower down than that. So yeah, whilst I can totally see it going down the way you think it could go down, and it wouldn't like be a surprise, I don't know. I just can't see Feige and co just being like, yeah, fair enough. We've had a good run. You're setting up your own thing. Enjoy. Because like I'm here, like Okay, so obviously, like, I'm getting into rumors and reports territory here. But there are some rumors and reports going around that there is plans for another Spider-Man trilogy, and that the aim they're going for it would be Spider-Man in college. And from what the reports are saying, it's like the trilogy that Feige originally wanted to make for the character. Now, this is pure speculation. This is baseless at the moment. This is just, someone has a source who has like heard this, so it could be completely untrue, and maybe Jake has the right of it. But I think it's possibly far more likely that just they're going to use No Way Home as, even if they keep their Sony stuff separate from the MCU and it's not the same universe, I think they'll do it in a way that like it'll allow basically for Sony to have their own Spider-Verse with maybe their own Spider-Man, but Marvel can still continue with the MCU with their own Spider-Man as well. I don't know how it's going to go down. I think it is just a case of we're going to have to wait until No Way Home.
Like Amy Pascal keeps saying.
Yeah, but just I don't know. I can't see a deal like that happening. Like basically them agreeing Spider-Man goes back to Sony. So long and thanks for all the fish. I can't see that happening without it being like leaked out into the public somewhere. Some disgruntled Sony or Disney employee, someone would have come out.
I don't know. I think since those Sony email links, they've really upped their security probably.
Yeah, but just like I said, it's someone at Marvel or Disney would have just been like, okay, so apparently we're losing Spider-Man. I'm not happy about this. I feel like that's the sort of like news that would get out if an agreement like that had been made. I do totally believe that there have been a lot of renegotiations to the deal, and maybe Sony are trying to assert a lot more control over the character.
Which they do have the right to.
Yeah, and I'm completely with them on that. They have the rights to the character. They can do what they want. But at the same time, I just can't see Marvel backing down that easy from Sony just going, we're taking the character back. So it is a case of watch the space. And I think that's why I'm leaning towards I don't think it's going to go the route of him being like lost from the MCU at the end. And I think that even if it does end like that, it's going to be a temporary thing. Like it'll just be like a cliffhanger moment of like, oh shit, he's no longer in the MCU, but like eventually he will find his way back home. But that's just my views, and I could be completely wrong. Jake could be completely right. I might be a little bit angry if Jake is completely right, but let's see what happens.
Again, that I said it's pure speculation on my part. I could be completely wrong, and
I hope you are.
And I hope I am as well, because in my heart, I do want Tom Holland's Spider-Man to remain in the MCU, because I do love his Spider-Man. And I do feel as if the reports are true, that in a way, I sound so selfish here, but we're owed like a proper Spider-Man trilogy in a way. As we've discussed numerous times in the before, our thoughts on how the MCU has handled Spider-Man, while fun, has maybe not been true to the character. So it would be nice to see Tom Holland do a true Spider-Man trilogy. That's just my opinion. I would just want to make it clear, I do love the Tom Holland Spider-Man films. Just saying, don't attack me, people.
Yeah, I'm with you as well. I think I heard somewhere that apparently it was like part of the Sony Marvel deal that like if they made these solo Spider-Man films, they would have to be an Avenger in each of them, which is why we've had Tony Stark, why we've had Nick Fury, and why we've got Doctor Strange in this third one, which I think is why I'm leaning more towards like the hope that what they mean is that just like this is the end of this trilogy, there'll be a renegotiation of like shit and stuff, and then there will be another Spider-Man trilogy, but in this one he'll be in college and it will be more Spider-Man focused, and they won't have to just throw in cameos. I'm just really hoping that that's true. And I'm going to hold on to that hope. I think even if it turns out you're correct and he ends up out of the MCU at the end of No Way Home, I'm going to be sat there going, no, we're still getting that college trilogy in the MCU. It's fine. It'll be MCU adjunct. It'll be fine.
Adjunct, yes.
Cletus Kasady, you have been tried, convicted, and sentenced to death by the state of California. May your passing bring closure to the victims' families, and may you find peace in the hereafter.
Soon come chaos Chaos soon come.
Are those your final words?
Enjoy the show!
Let's end this spoiler review with our closing thoughts. So, Tom, what are your closing thoughts on this film? Are you going to be watching it again?
This film was a movie that I watched.
That exists.
Yes. It had dialogue. It had scenes. It had characters in it. It's going to be for some people. It unfortunately wasn't for me. I mean, I may end up just watching it again at some point, but I'm not rushing to do it. And it's probably just going to be a case of if I can't find anything to watch and I notice the Venom 2 is on whatever streaming sites, I guess Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever, I'll just be like, hey, I'll just order a Chinese and watch Venom 2 and then probably fall asleep before the end of it. So it's probably... I'd actually say that out of all the films I've seen in the cinema this year, this one has been the worst. But there is definitely an audience for it. And if you enjoyed it and you've been hating this podcast, I'm sorry. But I am very glad that you enjoyed it. But it was not for me. Not for me, I'm afraid. The Shogun does not approve.
Yes,
Apart from the post-credit scene. He approves of the post-credit scene, but he does not approve of the implications that Jake has set out.
I don't approve of them either, Tom. I hope they don't come to pass. I'm pretty much with you on this one. This is not for me, this film. There is definitely, clearly an audience out there, and if you love this film, all the power to you. I hope you watch this film numerous times and you enjoy the hell out of it. It's just not for me. I didn't enjoy the humor aspects. I didn't enjoy the story, the direction of the characters. I didn't care about any of what they were trying to say in this film, if anything they were trying to say at all. It's a bit of a dumb popcorn film, but one that just doesn't land for me. Like, you can still make dumb popcorn films and make them a bit more entertaining and have character arcs like we've seen. Obviously debatable, the Fast and Furious movies and like the monster movies that we see, but they still have a hell of a lot more fun than what I've seen with Venom and Let There Be Carnage. So this is not for me. It's one I won't be revisiting, I don't think. I don't even think it deserves to be on in the background, personally, Tom.
I mean, just like you said, unlike the Fast and Furious films, this film doesn't even touch upon the concept of family. So.
I know, right? There's no family at all in this film, so it's not worth your time. If, in my opinion,
no homoeroticism. I demand a Venom film that is very homoerotic. I say this as a straight man. We deserve a homoerotic Venom film.
Well, maybe they'll learn their lessons and they can do it in the third film, because as we said, they're definitely going to be making more of these, and we'll be here to give our review when those films come out.
Yes, and next time we'll make sure Dave is here. I'm not having any of this, oh, I can't see the film before we were... I know what he was doing.
After all the rage and rantings he's given about this film, he's not even here to review it.
Yeah.
That's
the effect of film. Yeah.
We'll get his thoughts. We'll definitely get his thoughts once he manages
like, Dave,
to see
before we talk about DC fandom, how do you feel about Venom?
I don't even know if he's going to see it in time for that. So,
oh God, one day.
So, right, let's close out the show with our plugs and where people can find us. Tom, how about where are you?
Where am I? Well, I'm on Twitter at Comic Book Shogun, where I have mostly been tweeting about The Wire recently, but I promise I'll tweet more comic book stuff, especially because I'm seeing a lot of like Jack Kirby discourse on Twitter. Apparently some punks have been saying Kirby's a bad artist, and I'm not standing for this slander.
No,
but you can find me there.
That type of blasphemy will not be tolerated on Capes, Cowls Masks.
Yes. If anyone's listening and you're thinking to yourself, actually, I'm not a fan of Kirby, we don't want you here, leave. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Comic Book Shogun, where I will be delivering all my hot takes and occasional drunken thoughts, because I too often drink and tweet. You should never drink and tweet, people.
No.
Never drink and tweet.
That shit sticks for life.
It does.
And you can also find me on Twitter at Sweaty Jake, where I'm just goofing about and talking about the movies that I'm watching and stuff. And you can get all my ratings and reviews for those movies on Letterboxd at Jake Hart. And as for the show, you can find and follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Cowls Masks. And whether you use Anchor, Spotify, Google, or Apple Podcasts, subscribe and follow us on there. And if you're on Apple, leave us a rating and a review, as it all helps us go up in the rankings. So thank you all for listening to this spoiler review of Venom, Let There Be Carnage. We're back tomorrow for our coverage of DC Fandom, where we'll be going through all the trailers and footage that was announced that day. So stay safe, everyone. We'll see you very soon. Goodbye.
Bye.